The sync of Global and JP Dokkan is happening, but when is it happening? Why hasn't the sync started yet? Or has it? And this isn't Bandai's first time doing this, so how did One Piece Treasure Cruise, the sister app of Dokkan, handle their sync? That's everything we're talking about right here. Starting with, we just got a producer's letter with this timeline. Gives us basically nothing. A very key thing to point out here, though, is unification of the JP and international versions, operation schedules, asterisk, period, to be determined. And if you look into it even deeper, you have the entire chunk of the 9th anniversary with just the unification barely over what you consider the chunk of the 10th anniversary. So when we start talking 9th anniversary, I myself hoped that we could be synced by then. A lot of you guys said that's not possible. There's too much content. More on that in a second as well. But even if they aren't synced, even at the time of JP's 9th anniversary, which if you're not familiar, will begin around January 30th, they could at least still celebrate at the same time. And if a goal of unification is their plan, for sure by the 10th anniversary, then the 9th anniversary would almost definitely have to be synced up, because if it's not, it's going to continue to push back more and more releases between the two versions. However, that does not mean or even guarantee that Global will be getting the 9th anniversary unit at the same time as JP, which is really unfortunate. And I almost would want to believe that if that was the case, they would take this time during a producer letter post Worldwide Download Celebration to actually confirm that. Unfortunately, Amatsu could not do so. And with everyone always saying there's too much content for them to drop to make that happen, let's look at what is actually different at the time of filming this video. There are currently only two standard Dokkan Fests missing between the two versions. That would be the brand new Tournament of Power Android 17 and 18, as well as the Tech Super Trunks. Then we have an LR Dokkan Fest in the form of Super Saiyan 4 Goku. We have a Gold Coin LR in the form of just Goku, surprise. And then finally a Carnival LR, which is Omega Shinron. As of the filming of this, those are the only 5 premium characters that are not on the global version of the game that are already on the JP version. And then in terms of free-to-play cards, events, stuff like that, that's not a big deal. They don't care about that. If it was just that, they would probably sync literally at the moment of making this video. They care about money. When we dive a little bit deeper into 2 of these 5 releases, a massive shout out to Rody here. We actually have a look into how well each banner did. This came out a couple of months ago. It was a very, very good insight into just how well the game has been doing this year specifically. And so when you take a look at what is the worst grossing banner in the history of the game, which is crazy, looking at 8.5 years this deep, and the worst grossing banner comes just right before Worldwide Download Celebration, which you could say is an argument as to why it was so bad. But I think it's a mixture of Tech Trunks, who was the worst grossing banner of all time in the game, at least as of filming this. I know none of the worldwide banners would have been worse. It is possible the androids might be, but I also doubt that as well. I imagine the androids did at least a little better than the Super Saiyan Trunks, but I think it's a mixture of his animations weren't spectacular, his actual kit pretty bad, and we were on the eve of Worldwide Download Celebration. Hasn't stopped the banners before that. Nonetheless, that's one of the 5 units that hasn't released yet. Then you take a look at the second worst grossing banner, which was the Int LR Goku here, which another one that I imagine went under a lot of people's radar. So when you take a look at this information, you take a look at what Global is missing, they are sitting on a gold mine of opportunity to combine several of these releases into one massive banner, which brings us to One Piece Treasure Cruise. And also makes me very sad that knowing Bandai is the producer of both of these games and how they were able to handle One Piece Treasure Cruise versus Dokkan, it actually sucks. Let's take a look here. Massive shout out to Toastie. But here he is reacting on July 20th of 2021. Man, I believe they had been sort of teasing it, because he actually starts this off by telling everyone, some of you may have already guessed what the news would be, but actually goes on to say, today we can finally announce the Japanese version of One Piece Treasure Cruise, along with the English, French, and Korean versions, will be running on the same schedule from the end of December. During the announcement, actually told their player base when to expect it. Why can't we get that for Dokkan? I wish they had some more transparency for us, because then if we come over here, gave them a true roadmap, so they have an idea of when this was originally released for JP and when they're going to get it on the global version of the game. It truly shows them. And Sugo Fest is their Dokkan Fest. Basically at the end of December, they have all these massive Sugo Fests that come into one crazy high value banner. The one thing I do want to make sure that we point out is the fact that they announced it in July and then they actually synced by January, only 6 months. Now, I don't think Dokkan will be that fast. Even though the timeline is a whole lot of nothing, we for sure should, I would think, see a complete sync by Worldwide of next year. And while that is a full year, probably more realistic, 2x over what they did with One Piece Treasure Cruise, I think we can at least look at One Piece Treasure Cruise, see that they announced it, see that they completed it within 6 months, I think that's a really good outline to see how they handled it, and pray that we see a at least similar replication of it over on Dokkan. All Dokkan would really have to do is just at one point decide to launch one of the new JP characters. I'll give you guys a great example. Here in October on JP, we're going to get a legendary summon banner, which will be the first banner ever in the history of the game to have true pity built in. Following after that, at the end of December, beginning of November, we will get a brand new Dokkan Fest. Take that Dokkan Fest, give it to Global at the same time, then put Trunks and the Tournament Power androids on it. Call it a day. All the center Dokkan Fest are now completely caught up. The only thing you are then missing would be the LR that released a couple weeks before on JP. Technically, they could just put Goku on a banner, drop that same LR on Global, but that's not happening because we've now seen how they're moving post Worldwide. Global got the tier list that we got back in June on JP, and JP got a brand new Tournament of Power Android 17 and 18. The versions are the closest they've ever been. We've said that many times in the past, but this is actually the first time where it is truly true because of how many things that have been in synced in the past year. We celebrated New Year's together, celebrate Saiyan Day together, we celebrate Golden Week together, Worldwide Celebration together. We even celebrated the Gamma 1 and 2 release basically at the same time as well. Only two things that are missing are Anniversary and Tanabata outside of the random Dokkan Fest releases. So I was incredibly interested in seeing how would Dokkan handle post Worldwide Celebration. Would they combine some stuff? Would they just give in a little bit, or at least at the bare minimum give us something, which they did, a producer letter with not much info here, which then brings me to my tweet. What's everyone's thoughts on Global not celebrating the 9th anniversary with JP? Another year of waiting 5 months for units after telling the community a sync was happening feels like a really bad move, but after the timeline yesterday, 9th and 8th at the same time seems unlikely. If you guys aren't familiar with the producer-developer relationship, essentially the producer, from what I understand, makes most of the calls. The developer just does what the producer says to do, give or take. There's obviously a lot more into it, especially when you're working with an IP. But in this case, One Piece Treasure Cruise is a Bandai Namco produced product. And of course, obviously, Dokkan is too. They are two separate IPs, which could be part of the problem. One Piece does appear to be more of a golden child to the IP owners than Dragon Ball, which I know sounds crazy to say, but look at which one's been airing and is 1,000+ episodes in, and look which one has been on hiatus for 5+ years. So as much as I still want to believe, there is almost no way that they would tell us at the end of August that a sync is coming and not have it at least ready for the 9th anniversary to be on both versions at the same time. I have more doubts now than even before after getting the producer letter and after seeing what they did with One Piece Treasure Cruise. Because if they were able to say it then and they were able to do those things so far in advance with that game, it scares me a little more now than it did before. And even crazier for the people that just kept saying there's not time, there's not time. I started looking through. November is the Tanabata month for Global. So, you know, last November we got the ROF Blues. We then finished that up with Superheroes. And then we, of course, got the Tanabata LR. So it is a very jam-packed month. Don't get me wrong, but there's no real world where there isn't going to be somewhere jam-packed if they don't give in and just give a very high value banner. And as I mentioned before, worst grossing banners of all time, this is the time to go ahead and combine some stuff up. But if you look at January 2023, which granted this is on the heels of the superhero releases, but the only unit that released in that entire month was the Golden Frieza. That was it. They could start dropping stuff then too. And then if you look at February is just our October Dokkan Fest. This is actually the time slot of when the TOP androids are released on the global side. And then the Carnival unit JP will presumably be getting for middle of December, which will be like a double rate banner and all of that. It's just crazy when you start looking at the timeline and just how little actually happens in some of these months. Doubling up really wouldn't do that much. So let's take a look. Let's see what you guys were saying. So we've got Goresh here with the entire timeline they shared was a giant nothing burger, which is a lot of the sentiments I've shared right here in this video already. Not even sure why they even showed it, as it provided zero new information. So Goresh is on the same page as me. It is what it is. Like, there is nothing really to show for that other than maybe you could look into the fact that it has the, again, which has an asterisk, but it has that image sort of in between the end of the 9th anniversary timeline and the beginning of the 10th. That could be, if you like dissected it really, you might be like, that's kind of over Worldwide. So yeah, assets brought up a good point. I'm so confused they never said they weren't. And again, they didn't say they weren't. But the reason why I sent this tweet, I still want to believe the belief is slipping just a little bit, which I do reply and say, I know they didn't. And I'm hoping they do celebrate it at the same time. But Dokkan also moves weird. It just does. It's a gacha game. They've got to. Now that I looked up how they handled Treasure Cruise, I'm bleeding less and less towards that. And my expectations are definitely a bit lower after giving us a quote unquote timeline that showed literally nothing. Hydros chimes in and says the fact that the game will be fully synced after the 10th year is a bit ridiculous when there's not many summonable units between the versions. Good point. Just drop them all in a banner and release the events for people to play. Have the banner up for a couple months for people to summon. I don't see any good reason to wait for that long to sync these games together. Honestly, feels like version Z again. And I agree. Even Worldwide Celebration of next year is the time that they're hoping to have them completely synced, which if that is the case, then 9th anniversary would have to pretty much be celebrated at the same time. And so let's say hypothetically Global gets Tanabata early so that Global can still celebrate the anniversary anniversary at the same time it always has. But on the Tanabata banner, they actually give us the TOP Android. And what I mean by that is when JP is celebrating the 9th anniversary, you give Global its sort of like last Global first and allow it to have the 2024 Tanabata unit early. And then on that Tanabata banner, you go ahead, you release the Tournament of Power Androids that we got in October, which we just looked at earlier. This is the time slot for the JP October Dokkan Fest to launch on Global. So Global now has an early Tanabata banner and is also getting the Tournament of Power Androids at the same time. And let's say Tanabata next year is Tournament of Power theme. Let's say it's Revival, you know, UI Goku. And then it makes sense. And then now you've already given Global Tanabata, so you don't have to catch them up on that. And then on top of that, you then have given them the Tournament of Power Android, which is that time slot when they would have released anyway, and you just put them on the Tanabata banner. This is obviously a possibility, and something I haven't got to mention yet in a video that I'm mentioning now is I could see them doing that, which would be very interesting, right? Because JP would not be getting that for another 5 months. So it'd actually be a little bit of a flip-flop, and it would be very interesting to see how people would take that. It'd be a very busy time for someone like me who has kept up with both versions. I'd be having to cover the global version and summoning on an inevitable Tanabata unit, and then also covering 9th anniversary on JP. It would be pretty crazy. Say Sarah chimes in and says, hard to know for sure if that's the case. They might do a co-Annie for the 9th, but be out of sync for the other stuff. And I think that that is the most likely. I don't think the versions are synced at all by the beginning of February of next year. But again, please, if not, a bit disappointed, but to be honest, people had too much wishful thinking when everyone started expecting sync for the 9th. Dokkan has always been slow AF to do updates. You're correct. Someone responded to me and said they soft confirmed 9th anniversary was synced. Even then, they can have them be at the same time while Global can still catch up. I love that people have caught on to this, by the way, because when we were first discussing this, a lot of people were on me and mad at me for saying it would happen at the same time. Like, they won't be synced. Again, things change in a month and a half. People are more accepting of it. But it's like, when I was saying that, people were on me, dude. I was like crazy for saying that. Greg Dobb, which by the way, massive shout out to Greg Dobb. They do incredible showcases on their channel. They're awesome. They show you the defense stat, which I think is an update that we should absolutely get in the game. There's no reason for us to not be able to see where our defense is at in the middle of a super attack. Go check out Greg Dobb. Massive shout out to them as a creator. I think it's highly unlikely that we won't share the upcoming 2024 anniversary of both versions. Global jumps in during February. JP essentially has their Tanabata upgraded in July to show the international anniversary. The rest is the standalone releases will be likely for December gap on Global. That is another option too, is during the thank you celebration. Literally this year that we just looked at over on the Dokkan Wiki. Shout out the Dokkan Wiki. Shout out Toastie. Shout out everyone that's been in this video so far. But there's absolutely a situation where instead of what I just said them doing, they actually take the Tanabata banner that will now be the thank you celebration banner that will have LR Super Saiyan 4 on it. And on LR Super Saiyan 4's banner, they just go ahead and they give Global TOP androids. And at that point, whatever other Dokkan Fest is missing, that even the one JP gets at the end of October or Tech Trunks or whatever they decide to do. And as I'm making this video, it is absolutely possible that in 2 weeks, instead of it just being the Goku by himself, it's Goku with the LR releases on JP. Not likely. Or the Dokkan Fest at the end of October ends up being a shared celebration between the two versions. What Greg is mentioning here is also possible and still using the Tanabata banner essentially to do what I was saying, which is combining units and allowing it to be high value. And then for part 2 of the thank you celebration, which is typically a carnival release, and now we know that JP is also going to be getting a carnival release because that's where the carnival SR Goku released last year. You just throw Omega on it, you bring Omega back for JP as well, and it's just this massive high value banner between the two versions. And now you're completely caught up. And then we would know at that point, mid-December, we know there's nothing else for them to release on Global while JP's having its anniversary, so we know that they're synced. That would be really cool. That might be one of the better case scenarios. But massive shout out to Greg there, doing awesome showcases. If they're going to take that long to do it, they shouldn't have bothered announcing it until they were actually going to do it. And I agree. And that's why I'm still holding out hope. I don't think that you tell an entire player base, hey, we're syncing these versions up, when you know they're very aware that the last 2 celebrations to sync up are just Tanabata and Anniversary. And the one people really care about is Anniversary. It's always been a really, really crappy feeling being a global player, waiting on the Anniversary units, which I've only ever technically done once. I started playing JP by the 2nd anniversary, but I waited for Super Gogeta on Global that 1st anniversary, and it sucked. That's the reason why I got a JP account, was literally for Super Gogeta. I wanted to use him, so I got a JP account to do so. And that time gap is so long. It would be insane to do the announcement now and plan on not having a synced anniversary celebration until the 10th anniversary, a year and a half later. But it's Dokkan, so another year of the hype for the anniversary units not being present on Global. And I don't agree with that, because by the time we get them, we already know better units came out on JP, and that's not really been the case, right? Like, this year was a weird one because the 8th anniversary units, I think, are a little polarizing with their kits and their mechanics, especially the physical SSJ3 unit, which by the way is a really good unit, but probably the most questionable in recent recent years. Because like with 7th anniversary, a lot of people obviously loved Vegeta Trunks, and Vegeta Trunks were good, but they weren't like mind-blowingly better or anything than the 7th anniversary unit. And I actually probably would say that with the LRSSJ4 even this year, right? LRSSJ4 isn't necessarily like leaps and bounds better than the anniversary counterparts. Actually, at this point, after using them so much, I love the LRSSJ4 Goku, but I would still put probably the GT Goku and Vegeta over them. Probably not physical unit. Again, it's just too many flaws in the physical units kit. Very good unit, but definitely a lot of flaws. Again, a lot of weird kits this year, a lot of flawed kits. Very interesting. I feel like they could celebrate at the same time, just no fully sync up. I'm coping. People set expectations way too high thinking it would happen by 9th anniversary. The fact that a sync is happening still seems like a bit of a miracle. I agree. Honestly, it was something I had just let leave my mind ages ago. I imagine that the schedule sync is aligning with their comments that they had units up until 10th anniversary planned out already, so gotta wait now. I think that announcement had nothing to do really with the sync. I think it was just like, hey, this game has still got a lot of life, and just so you know, like, we are doing it up until the 9th anniversary. It's actually almost crazy to even say that, but again, this game makes so much money. It would be crazy for them to shut it down, especially with there's no console games happening. It's all just DLC at this point. Tenkaichi is looming, but probably still not releasing until either late next year or early 2025. So the mobile games are literally carrying, honestly, the franchise at the moment, the entire like gaming side of Dragon Ball 2. I think it was just more like, hey, look, this game is staying around, spend money on it. Like, it would just be odd to announce it if they weren't prepared to start sharing schedules soon, but this is Dokkan, LOL. I just love that that's like a unifying thing. Kind of expected as much. Didn't think it would happen that fast, to be honest. I was thinking closer to next Worlwide Celebration, so I'm fine with it. More time to grind and save stones. I mean, that is also a fair sentiment, but at some time we're just gonna have to, it's just gonna be like ripping a band-aid off. More units are gonna have to release than normal, and just gonna call it a day, basically. Very disappointing if true. It'd be like we're back to the same old, same old. I've been feeling that a lot lately. The most important part of the sync, in my opinion, is major celebrations being celebrated at the same time. Why announce it if we're still a year out from any change, you know? And I agree. I truly believe they would not have announced it to not have the anniversary synced up. And I really, really hope that them still being so in the dark on things is because we're about to see something awesome. They don't want to reveal too much until they're like, by the way, boom, here's this banner like Greg mentioned. Lots of units, lots of high value. You're seeing all the same stuff now as JP. New Year's is going to be together. Anniversary is going to be together, and we're synced. But if they're going to do that, I think they could just tell us. Like, that is so soon. But then maybe they're scared people won't spend money on other stuff. I don't know. Again, gotcha. So when do you think the sync will happen? Will 9th anniversary be together? Only time will tell. But in the meantime, you can stay here and click on this video and check it out. And you know what? You're going to love it. But I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.